What if you never left? What if you woke up in a hospital bed, unable to move, unable to scream, but fully aware of something in the room with you? What if the doctors and nurses didn't listen because they couldn't see what you saw? Hospitals are supposed to be places of healing, but sometimes they are places of death that refuses to leave. I thought I was getting better. I thought I had survived the worst. But what if I never actually left? What if I'm still there? What if it never let me go? This is my story. And I pray it never becomes yours. The first time I was admitted to the ICU, I barely made it out alive. The second time, I wasn't sure if I would make it out at all. It started with an accident, a simple fall down the stairs, a concussion, some broken ribs. The doctor said I was lucky, but I didn't feel lucky. I felt watched. I was wheeled into the same room where I had stayed before, but something was different this time. The air was heavy, thick, like breathing through damp cloth. The beeping machines seemed to slow down, their rhythm offbeat, almost whispering. The nurse, an older woman with tired eyes, tucked me in. "Try to get some rest," she said. But how could I? Something was wrong. The shadow in the corner. The first night I barely slept. Every time I drifted off, something pulled me back. A cold sensation creeping up my spine. A whisper I couldn't quite hear, but somehow understood. The air in the hospital room felt thick, oppressive, as if the walls themselves were closing in. The steady beeping of the heart monitor became a metronome of dread, each tone slicing through the unnatural silence that had settled like a fog. At some point in the dead of night, a pressure grew heavy on my chest. At first, I thought it was my mind playing tricks on me, but then the weight became unbearable. I struggled to inhale, my ribs barely expanding, my lungs grasping for air that wouldn't come. My fingers twitched, desperate to reach for the call button, but my body refused to obey. Then I saw it. A shadow darker than any natural absence of light. It stood in the farthest corner of the room, just beyond the sterile glow of the hallway light seeping through the door. It didn't move, didn't breathe, but I felt its eyes, if it had them, boring into me, stripping me down to my very soul. Panic surged through me, but it was useless. My limbs lay frozen, my voice smothered in my throat. I could do nothing but watch as the thing in the corner began to move. Slow, deliberate steps. The shadow drifted toward me, silent yet suffocating, its form shifting, elongating, the darkness bleeding outward like ink in water. My heart pounded so violently that the machine beside me shrieked in protest, its frantic beeping echoing my terror. The wires attached to my body seemed to tighten, as if the very machines meant to monitor my life were now conspiring to drain it. The closer it came, the heavier the air became. My skin tingled with icy needles, my ears filled with an unnatural hum. Low, grating, like something ancient trying to whisper through layers of time itself. I tried to scream. Nothing came out. The figure loomed over me now, its shadow swallowing the last slivers of dim light. A cold tendril of darkness slithered over my wrist, curling around my bruised skin, and then it vanished. The weight on my chest lifted, the room returned to its usual lifeless stillness. My breath came in gasps, my throat raw, though I had made no sound. The machine beside me beeped at a steady, normal pace once more, as if nothing had happened. But something had. The next morning, the nurse frowned as she checked my vitals, her fingers lightly tracing fresh bruises along my arms. "You must have thrashed in your sleep," she murmured, concern lacing her voice. I swallowed hard, my throat dry as dust. But I hadn't moved. I had been completely, utterly still. The roommate who wasn't there. By the second night, I wasn't alone in my room. A curtain separated me from another patient who had been brought in overnight. I could hear them breathing, hear the rustle of the sheets as they shifted in bed. At around 3 a.m. I heard something strange. Whispering. Faint but unmistakable. I thought it was my roommate, but the words were garbled, not human. Then came the crying. Soft at first, then louder, wailing, as if someone were begging for help. I pressed the call button. The nurse came in, flicking on the lights. "Who is that?" I asked. She frowned. "Who is who?" I pointed to the curtain. "My roommate. They're crying. Can't you hear them?" The nurse gave me a strange look. Then she pulled back the curtain. The bed was empty. "You're alone in here," she said. But I wasn't. The hand under the bed. By the third night, I was sure I was losing my mind. I refused to sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I felt something crawling beneath my bed. The sensation of movement, of nails scratching against the metal frame. Then at exactly 3:33 a.m. I felt it. A hand. Cold fingers curled around my ankle, tightening, pulling me down. The touch was unnatural, dry, almost leathery, as if the skin had long since withered away. I screamed, thrashing, knocking over the IV stand. The lights flickered as the machine alarms blared. A nurse rushed in. "What happened?" I gasped, pointing beneath the bed. Someone grabbed me." She knelt, peered under the bed and froze. Her face drained of color. Her breath hitched. The blood drained from her face as she stared into the void beneath my bed. "We need to move you now." I didn't argue. She pressed the call button rapidly, her fingers trembling. Another nurse arrived, and together they hurried to unhook my IV, lowering the bed's railing. I tried to sit up, but something held me in place. The unseen grip still clung to my ankle, tightening, resisting. The second nurse reached down instinctively, perhaps thinking my leg was tangled in the blanket. The moment her fingers slipped beneath the bed, she let out a strangled gasp and jerked back as if burned. Her wrist, deep red impressions, as if fingers had wrapped around her flesh with impossible force. "Get him out of the bed," the first nurse barked. They hauled me up, dragging me into a wheelchair. My leg was released the moment I left the mattress, but the sensation lingered. Ice-cold fingers seared into my skin. The second nurse clutched her wrist, her eyes wild, refusing to speak. They wheeled me into the hallway, away from the room, away from whatever had been reaching for me in the dark. As we turned the corner, I dared a final glance back. The lights flickered again, the shadows shifting beneath the bed, stretching outward, creeping toward the space I had just vacated. And then ever so slowly, the bed creaked, as if something was climbing back in.